Hi, everyone, and welcome to our CMO Roundtable webinar series. I'm really delighted today to welcome our global panel of speakers who come from a variety of leading tech companies. And we've got speakers joining us all the way from San Francisco to Singapore. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has caused the biggest disruption in decades to the global economy, with many advanced markets expecting or have already hit recession this year. Of course, billions of people are working remotely. We've got the temporary closure of many industries, and we're seeing rates of unemployment that we've not seen since the Great Depression. So many aspects of how businesses are operating need to change in order for us to survive and thrive past this time of uncertainty. Now, this crisis has played havoc with marketing departments, really challenging our way of thinking and doing what I put in quotation marks was normal. So on today's panel, we have 6 speakers who have a wealth of marketing experience in the areas we're looking to cover in this webinar series. And they're really eager to share their insights and ideas to help you effectively adapt to a new marketing reality. So this leads us to kick off part 1 to find out what's changing in digital strategy. So even pre-COVID, most B2B marketers had moved or were migrating to digital marketing transformation. But however, now it does feel like we're shifting rapidly to digital technologies driven by the pandemic. So my first question is for you, Maxine. Are companies turning to a full-blown digital marketing transformation to survive this crisis?
Yes and no. So companies are definitely leaning into digital more, and they've been thinking about digital first when they've been looking at their strategies and tactics. I think, we've had to a little bit pivot into the digital space right now when we might not have before, because we really can't be in that physical space anymore. So I think the value of digital is becoming much more apparent. And eventually we will go back to having some sort of normalcy where we are in a physical space together. And I think once we do, we'll have a much better mix once we do go back.
Great, thank you. And what advice can you give on how one can adapt their digital strategy during these uncertain times?
I think that right now, trying something new and different, something that you have always wanted to do, but you haven't been able to, it's a perfect time for it. With digital, you can pivot quickly and you learn really, really quickly. And I think taking advantage of that is really, really helpful right now. And I think at the end of the day, we're all learning. This is all new to us, this time that we're in. And so I think there's no right or wrong answer. So try something like a virtual networking event, send a coffee card to somebody or deliver a snack like you would at a physical event, create a quiz or playful content. Small changes can make huge impacts. And so I think right now, just really taking advantage of digital is important.
Okay, great. And can you share your experience of, for example, how have you built out your digital strategy even further during this time of, new remote lifestyle?
Yeah, so actually I was just reading the other day a Gallup poll that said 7 in 10 employees work remotely all or part of the time right now. And so, I think that was really important in us making some, decisions early on because, we've had a lot of physical events planned. And so we all sat down and kind of brainstormed together new ideas and what we could do. And we tried them. And some things worked really, really well and some things maybe not as much. But, we, turned to some of the experts we had within our community and within the company and created small short videos and created a video series called Identity Talks. And we created, these content hubs for specific events that we already had great content for. And we knew people were still going to be looking for that content. So we created spaces specific for those events for people to come and turn to. So I think, just kind of thinking outside of a box right now is where we need to be.
Okay, great stuff. We'll actually look at covering innovation in another section, but thank you so much for that, Maxine. Rohan, my next question is for you. So some marketeers have relied heavily on traditional offline marketing strategies. How can they successfully move to an all-digital strategy?
Well, Veena, as I said, the devil's in the details. So in today's in current scenario, it's a simple process of test and learn. So that's something we've tried in certain cases. Try small, make sure it succeeds, and then scale it up. So I agree to you. Agree with you that a lot of companies are still traditionally relied on offline strategies, but when you look at the situation today, that's no longer an option. So what Maxine said, it is something that one has to get used to it. So in our case, I can't speak for everybody, but absolutely in our case, we changed some of our viewpoints and approach strategies, how we look at digital. So that's the way to go. One way that I definitely believe strongly personally is to invest in digital infrastructure. A lot of times that is an afterthought or given a viewpoint that is a little not so strong viewpoint. But one thing which is you absolutely need if you're going to go this way is to invest in infrastructure. And luckily, in my company, we've been looking at this strongly for the last couple of years. And when the pandemic hit, at least we had the backing that we used on making sure that we were able to leverage our infrastructure or the marketing technology stack to benefit from it. We can speak a bit more later, but that's the way I feel strongly about it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Kirsten, how, I guess as this crisis forces our customers, employees and supply chains into digital channels and new ways of working, are there any digital actions that maybe you've hesitated to pursue in the past, but now you're putting into immediate action?
Actually, yes, Veena, there were a few areas where we were on the fence and looking at our digital marketing strategy. To Rohan's point, I think there's an important part of the marketing organization today that is your digital marketing stack, that infrastructure that we all rely on for not just our holistic marketing strategy, but how we execute in the digital world. So there were some areas we were on the fence. What this pandemic allowed us to do was to really evaluate our stack. What were we really using? What was essential? And really, because we knew budgets were going to tighten, what we needed to jettison, what was kind of a luxury. But it really accelerated a couple of decisions on our end. Of course, we have all of our basics, our pay-per-click, our CRM, our marketing automation platform, that whole infrastructure that supports our marketing organization. But we started to look at other areas that we knew that we were going to need better efficiency to be able to execute in a more heavier digital strategy. So for instance, things like Hootsuite, we decided to take the plunge and to get a paid version of Hootsuite to manage our social, because we knew social was going to be much more of a focus for us moving forward. Also, we started to look at other types of technologies like IP tracking to look at intent as people are visiting our website. We also started looking at virtual event platforms to Maxine's point. We know we're not going to be able to be in person for a while, so we invested in a virtual platform to be able to host webinars and events for our community and to do demand generation. And then we started to look at things like content experience platforms, because we know that for at least the foreseeable future, people are going to be engaging with our brand and with our products digitally. So how do we make sure that they have a content experience, they get to explore what we have to offer, and how do we help them make decisions about what's best for them? If we think about our customers, they're also trying to adapt to this new world. So delivering the value that we have in our products to them and being able to express that in a very clear way digitally was an important part of how we reevaluated how we go to market digitally.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we recently checked in with over 40 marketers around the world to find out how COVID has affected them. And we're hearing some directional trends begin to emerge, and would, of course, love to hear our panelists share their perspectives and experiences. Some marketers are saying that they are decreasing the amount previously budgeted for offline channels. Of course, this seems quite reasonable since most face-to-face events have been cancelled. However, other offline marketing channels are still viable. Kirsten, what do you think the future holds for offline marketing channels such as print advertising and direct mailers?
I think they're still going to hold an important part of our marketing strategy. One thing that we saw over the past few years is kind of the fatigue, for instance, in email. So going back to things like direct mailers and brochures was a way to connect with our audience. And for my particular industry, we know that print and print magazines are still a very, very vital part of how our audience receives information. So we know that those are going to continue to be important as part of the mix. The question is, in what percentage? How much are we going to continue to invest in some of those offline channels because they are still important? And that's one thing we're trying to evaluate now is the cost, because that, everything kind of changed in terms of budgets when the pandemic hit. So it's really looking at what's the right balance of using those tactics and reaching your audience and making sure that they're effective.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to our next topic, which is revenue generation. Now, of course, organizations are striving to meet their Q3 and Q4 goals, and some might have the tendency to push forward with the same determination as last year. But of course, we're all in a totally different time now, and there needs to be a fine balance between pushing to hit targets and revenue figures, whilst taking into consideration how the crisis is actually affecting our customers. So my next question is to you, Shani. How do you maintain empathy and care for your customers, but also fulfill the business need of revenue generation?
I think it's a necessity, right? It's a reality and a necessity that what we want as a brand is not the only thing that matters. I feel like growth marketing especially is a lot like being at a party and you're trying to make new friends. If everybody in the group is talking about one thing and you just jump in and start talking about yourself, you're not going to win any new fans. So it's really critical that you do remain empathetic, and that might mean sometimes taking your foot off of the growth gas because right now, more than ever, it's a critical time for brands to demonstrate what they stand for. And especially as customers are making values-based purchase decisions, if you do not show that you care about the topics that are top of mind for everybody right now, you have the chance of losing brand trust. And it's a lot harder to re-earn that trust once it's been lost than it is to kind of put your foot back on the gas after there's a form of recovery. So just participating in the conversation that people care about can sometimes be what gets them to turn on the light switch of like, oh, I might want to buy from you. Similarly, if you don't participate in the conversation and you just keep running the same ads, just keep saying the same things, they could just turn you off forever.
Yep, I think that makes perfect sense. And what's your approach to growth during a pandemic and I guess most recently a cultural revolution?
It's been based a lot in listening. So, we looked at every channel in which we get feedback, from social to sales calls to customer support. The company I work for has both a self-serve and a direct sales business. So we're lucky that we can get a high volume through the self-serve feedback channels and high quality through the direct sales kind of face-to-face conversations. And what we've heard is that what everybody wants are resources to help them through these challenging times. So while we typically speak to salespeople, what we've created is a whole series about how to thrive during COVID, from hiring to managing to seeking pipeline. And we've also taken a lot of very active steps in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We even reprioritized our entire product roadmap to build a tool that lets companies see who is being led by a diverse leadership team and which venture capitalists are investing in those companies. And that action alone, it generated more conversation among the community in PR than any of our product launches had in the past. And it just showed us that actually helping and kind of taking a little detour from what you might think is your direct line between point A and profitability can be even more lucrative.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're now going to move on to our next topic and see what areas are getting investment since the pandemic began. There have been quite a few recent findings that indicate silver linings during what otherwise has been a bit of doom and gloom. Quite a lot of companies are increasing their investment in areas such as IT, infrastructure, marketing automation. So, Manish, my next question is to you. What investments do you feel are the most necessary to create the technology environment that will allow companies to thrive in the new normal?
So the way I think of it is in two directions, of course, in terms of one, what needs to be done and how it can be done. So there are these aspects of reaching to your audience in a better way, in a more targeted way, ability to understand the audience better, ability to understand the audience current pains and their current situation. So everybody has been affected in different ways. How do you tackle that? How do you address those? How do you make sure that your communication and your messaging aligns with that? So that is about making sense of all the data that you have, that you already have perhaps on your website, behavior of your people, behavior to the campaigns on your CRM. Bringing them together, being able to analyze that would guide in terms of what really needs to be done, what kind of messages and so on. At the same time, investment is also needed in making sure that the team is able to perform in this time and really be able to use that. So access to that data, ability to analyze that data, ability to work together in a remote fashion, and also the aspects of simple work management, simple processes automation, small processes. Those all aspects will need to be looked at and invested in.
Okay, great. And what areas particularly have you seen investment in during this crisis?
So, of course, the one big area of investment has been, of course, about the productivity of people, marketing, as well as sales teams, in terms of equipping them better with all sorts of tools to be doing that. And also, the other area of investment that I have seen is in learning, as Kirsten and Rohan mentioned, the digital infrastructure needs to be built up, and Maxine mentioned the need to be learning quickly. Now, that's one area of investment that we have definitely seen, and with that, much of the investment has been going into the analytics aspects of it, where data from multiple streams can be brought together, analyzed, and to build insights which are relevant.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rohan, my next question is to you. How and why have your teams been investing in their marketing, in their Martech stack, marketing automation and customer experience?
So Veena, I think I've been lucky to be a part of a team that we value the whole concept of customer experience. So we realize and identify the value that a great customer experience brings to an organization. Now, for a company like mine, it is critical that when our customers or even our consumers land on our website, for example, they are given the best possible experience that really adds to their whole, the whole reason why they're there. So hence, we've been investing in our Martech stack, not because of this pandemic, but from some time. So hence, the whole stack on our experience commerce, on our ad tech has been something that we have invested through some years. So it's not something that happened, luckily, because of the pandemic. I know the acceleration of adoption has increased, but for our case, I think we were a little better prepared on this than maybe others. So in our case, what we definitely have tried to improve on and not build is the experience that we're trying to give, A, on our destination, let's say a website, and B, when we do our email marketing, wherein we are talking about people who are known to us. We are trying to build that communication a little better, be a little humane about it, and bring about empathy to it. So that when you're talking to people who are already grappling with larger issues of life and business, and be a little less salesy than we should be. And I think we've seen some success while we try to do this. And that could be, translated into metrics which are typically associated with media metrics or email marketing metrics. So we've seen that. And where we invested a little more than before is obviously how we enhance our experience even better. So how do we contextualize experiences? How do we personalize those experiences in certain cases? So that's been the area that we have definitely spent a little more time and resources, which could be money, could be people. So that's something I can add to it on this point.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So technology is obviously helping support companies and individuals during the largest ever remote working phase. And an initial survey that was conducted by Spiceworks' Davis back in March found that companies were looking to increase their investment in IT. And after, of course, the initial rush to remote work, we carried out a recent poll amongst our IT pros, which indicated that IT spending will continue and businesses were still seeking out IT solutions to help them deal with the remote challenges. So my next question is to you, Karen. Can you please elaborate on the research findings and how this can benefit marketers in IT and tech, those who are looking to connect with IT buyers during these uncertain times?
Sure thing. So a few months ago, people were rushing to buy technology to support this remote workforce, and they were forced to do that practically overnight. And where today we're past that initial frenzy, we're still hearing from the market that people still need to make further investments in technology. So in fact, our findings indicated that 54% of our IT pros are saying that they still need to make further IT purchases to support their workforce in this remote environment. So that said, specific tech needs may vary by company. Some need more laptops or headsets and others need VoIP solutions. But we're also hearing that home internet speeds are also a frustration. So this presents opportunities for marketers to influence buyers who are in market and might be looking for technologies that they hadn't expected maybe to purchase this year. So our advice to marketers now is, think about targeting your campaigns to reach buyers that are in market today. So those people who are showing purchase intent right now. And also, take an educational approach with your marketing. Consider campaigns that offer helpful information or provide access to content assets with valuable info. Those kinds of things seem to be the most successful these days.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That wraps up part one. So you can join our panelists for part 2 and 3 to find out more about data and insights, brand and the buyer's journey, virtual events, content marketing, organic traffic, and so much more. We've got a lot to pack in. So thank you again for listening and join us for parts 2 and 3.